Dear you, dear far right. Believe me, this is a summary. I am hurt, tired, bitter, and struggling to write this statement. Those who follow correctly will have noticed that since the GQ and the Trump campaign, during which I moved mountains on French Twitter, #UnclickFrance, thanks to my decision to work internationally, the targeted censorship has only worsened. The same one I started to experience in 2015, before the phenomenon began in the US, and well before it hit France, with zero to no support in France since I was alone then to undergo the incredible treatment. As I predicted then, all these practices, destined to erase us from the virtual public space, have in a few years become atrociously generalized, and during this time, they have reached their goal: destroy my brand and political line, far too powerful for the liking, as well as my efforts to return to the front line. Huge fatigue. 2019. I am now resigned. Not because they vanished, most of everything I did, and are cutting the grass even as it grows under my feet. No. Their desire to annihilate me is proportional to my efficiency, and they know it, to my entire devotion to harm them. And that is both my reward and my motivation. Though I resign myself only because the uninterrupted effort of the enemy to silence me is inversely proportional to the help of my own people to make it true. And that in these conditions, even with all the goodwill of the world, no one can fight anymore. Understand, I am no longer at the point of fighting to be able to continue working, but simply to be able to exist. Challenge. Because of my unusual profile, my existence as a political figure was itself a challenge, especially regarding a part of my own political family. In retrospect, I am amused to see that my share of modernity, to which the scarecrows are allergic, is nevertheless, combined with my sincerity, responsible in large part of my success. So I will continue to do the opposite of my critics, but differently. After more than 17 years of isolating myself during my radicalization, and after 6 years of giving everything and of brilliantly doing, with Electre, everything I am hated for, the Zog now challenges me to continue to exist. Pretty logic, since I am one of the spokesmen of the only race summoned to step aside. Used to challenges, but realistic about my chances of succeeding this one, I decided to answer this new challenge by another challenge, even crazier, and by a total change of strategy. Instead of sabotaging myself by struggling to rebuild what remains of my rules, I will change everything, and only use my assets to trap them. In spite of appearances, I am not giving up, and all that I will do in the future will always be motivated by the only thing that animates me and has been my highest concern for so many years: the struggle for our existence and for the maintaining of the natural order that makes us what we are. Unfortunately, due to the insane malevolence of our circles, I will not say more about my plans, for fear that an existence and a project beyond the understanding end up being immediately sabotaged and reduced to nothing. Warning: I do not generalize at all activists or politically oriented people, but after more than a decade being close to the far right, first from afar, then from way too close, here and elsewhere, sadly, my report is final. Between the typical French spinelessness, the trailer trash mentality and attitudes, the ideological drifts, the omnipresent chilling and subversion, the quarrels of chapels, and endless egotistical battle. Paradoxically, the camp that is right about everything is yet crowded with lunatics. And if the most radicals of us are to be our last bastion of protection, then abandon all hope, because all too often, the better their ideas, and the more repulsive these persons are. No light either, at the end of the official tunnel, since Golem, the National Front, or the National Gathering, hides it jealously. Mixing styles like I did was, first and foremost, a metapolitical challenge, because that was what seemed to me to be the most unexpected and promising angle of attack, as porn and race are deeply tied together. Meanwhile, I finally understood why this haunting reality, this racial war, and progressive plagues that undermine our society. Tell me about challenges. For quite a while, I weighted the pros and cons, and then decided to assume my natural antibody role and to talk about the heart of the problem. Quite mysteriously at first, to get around the inevitable social suicide. But then, with the success coming, more and more directly, without ever naming them. The first French alt-right count, transforming alone, by continuous work and with the precious help of a handful of brave frogs. The ultimate stigma, in bright truth, carried by crews of patriots and French nationalists of all currents, elected officials, personalities, parties, movements, and militants. The same one who alone would never have ventured next to this question, even less named the culprits. Demonstrates the power of the mass effect and how courage has variable geometry. Because since then, all this small world went back to being cucks to the usual nationalist line, which, since my eradication, reigns again on the French landscape. For me, a posteriori, the Twitter topic is almost entirely devastating, since they wrecked in a fucking click all that I had constantly built there for years. But the beauty of working on this site is that it's alive. What matters is not only what one posts there, but also the trace that one leaves there, both on the community and in the minds of the people. Complex to explain. Small example to illustrate. If Twitter is this gigantic organism and that mini-me drawing my sharp approach of the QG in front of a stunned public, cuts him deeply before he ejects me. Today, permabanned or not, the scar is still there, and most of the audience as well. All that to say that, yes, only positive point and glimmer of hope for me and for friends. All my work is definitely not lost. And I see every day how it paved the way for the only frog whom I've always missed on the site when it was bananas, aka Hervé, aka one of my favorite frogs, who brilliantly took over and finally started tweeting. Yay! The war is happening on Twitter. Period. That's why they got rid of the opposition and even plan to kill the site to do so. Because up there, we win. Those who have lived these thrilling ages with me know how much I summarize, how much it deserves a book, and like me, end up cutting onions when thinking back to the incredible moments that we lived, to this huge power that we had and that was taken from us. The repression in the face of this ideological quake, which, by my good care, was getting more powerful every day, proves that in everything I was right. If they ended me, it was because I was winning my crazy bet. To talk about the GQ, of course. Basically social suicide, but even worse. Talk about it without losing, but actually winning. Reminder that with a much smaller account, I often exceeded the figures of Marine Le Pen, with obviously much more radical stances, and at the constant rate where I was growing, today, without censorship, my account would nicely be on its way to 100k and would do immense damage. You're a threat? You're cancelled. But let's put things into perspective and say that the only thing that they did that was cool, in the end, is to protect me. Because today, without censorship and in real life, I would have also have won a great deal of troubles. So in short, I have at least the chance to get away with it. For now. Because in all cases, it is suicide. Even if you're repentant. And that's very important. The day they decide to end you, and the day you don't have the figures anymore, you are done. Finished. Which, by the way, explains the number of mostly French people who act now as if I never existed. The GQ stigma really is some kind of inverted Streisand effect. The second you stop being powerful, the more you will try to exist, and the less people will acknowledge you. All of them approved of my line when I was one of the most influential French accounts in the fasciosphere and could protect them. They hid behind me, cheered, and helped uphold these ideas because deep down they agree. Meanwhile, Zog disposed of me, and every time I manage to come back, the only thing that really increases is the number of closed doors. I am and will remain Electre, a public personality who has done enough politically speaking to establish a clear ideological line, as well as an attitude to have. I am not ashamed of nothing. We are not ashamed, and have nothing to be ashamed of, because against those who work to make perversion a new norm, or radicality, only calls for common sense. Having talked about pretty much everything, without neglecting the most important, I don't have much more to prove or add, but this sad fact. In our countries, victory will slip through our fingers as long as our circles, the far right as we know it, will represent our ideas. And we are running out of time. Above, I spoke about metapolitics because despite the deep disappointment of people, proportional to the time spent amongst those who embody or ennoble unnecessary fights, and in an absolutely crazy bet on human nature, I will, however, bet on the latter to continue my mission. From now on, the success and durability of my struggle will depend on my talent not to do politics, since I'm not allowed anymore. In theory, it also means that it will be difficult to stop me. It's easy to spit on the normies. However, they are spontaneously, virtually speaking, much more effective than most of our own. A question of generation, maybe, but not only. To make sure of their superiority, you just have to pick up any frivolous YouTuber with a moderate following and consult their social networks to notice that you are not dealing with a passive audience, as it is too often the case with us, where you can travel fucking far to join and support the heart of the white anger to finally spend dozens of hours to translate and edit a dope report on an explosive issue everyone cares about. So much so that nobody ends up even sharing it. Nowhere, except out of France, of course. Because here, it's everyone for themselves, and especially against each other. Not bad for those who, among all, should display the most foolproof solidarity and sense of community. The normies create, without even being asked, real active fan bases that themselves moderate, promote, and produce content. Okay, yeah, they don't politically incorrect, so they're not ashamed and can engage safely and proudly alongside their favorite idols. If at least those of us who don't fight openly for fear of losing something could put themselves in the shoes of the few insane people, including myself, who give their lives for the fight, then they would spontaneously make an important gesture by supporting them financially. But no, again, If we check the crowdfunding of any trendy content creator, it would have more patrons than any French nationalist leader. It looks messy. It is sad for our activists who struggle alone, but also for our movements, which disappear publicly as anecdotal and powerless. Of course, I am not teaching you anything by saying that money is power, but I am stressing it because once again, in real life, as on Twitter, figures are everything. And if our own leaders do not impress as they should, then it is our ideas that are marginalized. Life is well done. After so long looking for virtual solutions that could allow me to monetize my work and constant commitment, in other words, make my life a little profitable, it's finally the year where I find them that I have to change my plans. Well, actually, it does not change anything, and I will still need your support, especially since it's going to be even more work than before. With the difference that from now on, I will, in addition to the new political projects, focus on another activity where my work should finally pay. Yeah, but in the meantime, it's going to be a pain as usual. By the way, my deepest thanks go to Pierre Giorgio and Badaf, two good Frenchmen and leaders who have chosen to set the example and help make all the difference for me. How? By supporting me morally and financially for only one shekel per month. It is not much, but it is everything. Technical issues aside, I have been slow to launch my crowdfunding because deep down, I was anticipating this injury that I could not recover from. I was dying for fear of being disappointed, of the thought of you abandoning me when I was finally calling for help. In the end, this is ultimately not the case, and my relief and gratitude are immense. So 1,000 thanks also to all those who have enlisted into the 6 million army and committed to my side. And this, despite my almost total lack of official communication on the subject. Really, the success of this operation is the only thing that have given me hope these last years. And it saves me from a total disappointment. It gives me the faith to continue and the strength to undertake afterwards. Do you want to join the rank of those who really help me to move forward? Well, it's simple, anonymous, secure, and the link is on my news site. Want to support otherwise? You can also grab a fashy tea in the shop. I started this text by, believe me, this is a summary, because I had opted for a written statement. But in the meantime, you voted for a video that allowed me to tell a little more, and I had to. I have so much to say all the time, and I have to constantly restrain myself. It is exhausting. As Piero San Giorgio say, it's a whole book that I need. Allow me to develop a little on the practical aspects of this thing, and I'm done. It's been days I am struggling with this text, with all these ideas, that this whole process completely blocks the functioning of me and prevents me to breathe and focus on the next step, because it is both an end and a beginning. The queen is dead, long live the queen. For real, I do not die, nor do I lose. It would make them too happy. Nah, I will maintain an active facade. They've already wiped out my official fan account, not because my cover was blown, but because when on Twitter you're the victim of a mass harassment and reporting campaign, which goes against the site rules, it is you that is shut down and not your abusers. Fun fucking world. Positive point, it is technically a pain to counter the permaban and come back to the site, but at least this attempt demonstrated that it is indeed possible, and I will try again when this ironic road dumpster fire settles a bit, because it is necessary. Because as always, but even more than before, the only thing that will really matter is online influence. But this time, by doing as little as possible. I said, I don't have much more to prove. So, from now on, like almost all politics, the only content I will produce will be true yet self-censored statements to answer important events, while hoping they don't shut down the page, post, account, whatever. I will also post the good old memes and selfie and rely on your active help to keep growing everything. Sad reminder that my original Facebook page was shut down at 8K. It was a pain to get them in the first place, and it's even more difficult to grow back ever since. So in this regard, to miss nothing and to help make the publication successful, do not count on Twitter or Facebook to show me on your feed ever. I warmly invite you to join my public Telegram channel where everything is centralized live. So yeah, an active facade and the project to write more content from my new, already loaded with information sites so that we really know who I am and what I am standing for. If you have not visited yet, it is time. And please, before you leave, take a moment to write a word in the guest book. That's important. Also, staying faithful to my international position as French ambassador for the far right, one that does not seem to interest anyone here, I will continue to partake in our English media. I am not giving up. I want to bypass them and try another way. With a wild hope that on the day they come for me, this time not to silence me discreetly, but to crucify me publicly, he will still be by my side, even more numerous and angry. Because they will come. It is a matter of time. And it is what we'll be waiting for now. This day, I will stand proud and will not deny anything. I already said it on Twitter, but I repeat it here. If one day I disavow, it is clearly because they are threatening my family. Those who know me know it. My heart belongs to our fight, to France, to our civilization. And at the time I am finally wrapping up this statement, it is still sobbing while the ashes of Notre Dame de Paris are cooling. Shattered by the disaster, I still notice foolish hope. That sadness is omnipresent, here but also elsewhere, except for the usual trash. So it allows me to refine my previous observation. The people today are so very ready to vote for the far right that it is vital for the lodges and lobbies that it remains what it is, a failure. Thank you for listening to me, and thank you for your support. Nous spero.